Welcome to the live stream today. This is number 3 of the Service Workers series. Apparently that's a little bit of a tongue twister today. So today I'm going to start out talking about foot pain and plantar fasciitis and go through some things that we can do to help with that. And then we're going to go through just a little short exercise circuit, putting together the stuff from the last few weeks. Because really that's the best way to get yourself stronger and feeling better, is to start incorporating all of those things into your routine on a regular basis. So to start with, let's talk about our feet and what we can do to reduce foot pain. So the first thing to think about is the shoes that we're wearing and how we're moving our feet when we're walking. So one of the things that's really important for our feet is for them to be able to move normally. So if we're wearing really stiff shoes, really narrow shoes, really heeled shoes, all of these things can interfere with just the way our feet move. And we have a whole lot of joints in our feet. They're intended to be able to move. So significantly restricting that is going to increase your foot pain. So ideally, we have shoes that are wide enough to let our toes spread out, and especially if we're working on our feet and it's kind of warm, it's not uncommon for people's feet to swell a little bit, so you really want to have enough space in your shoes to allow for that, so that they can get a little bit hot and maybe a little bit swollen. They can spread out. Your toes have room to move. That's the first step in really helping your feet to feel better. You also want them to be flexible enough that they bend. So you want your foot to be able to kind of go through this motion in your shoe and not have it be so restrictive that it can't move. Of course, the next thing we want to think about is the cushion, especially for those of us who are working on cement floors. So it's good to have a good insole that has a little bit of a cushion. You don't want it too cushy because that can actually reduce the amount of movement that your feet are able to do and increase foot pain, but you want enough for a little bit of shock absorption, so you're not just pounding your feet on the pavement. If you have arches that tend to collapse, which I do, a little bit of arch support is going to be helpful. You also ideally want to be strengthening your feet and strengthening your arches so that your muscles can hold you up. But when you're busy and you're running around and you're working, you're not thinking about what your arches are doing. So you do want to have enough arch support to help balance that out. Not so much. I can't have a lot of arch support because my arches do tend to collapse a little bit, and that actually hurts my feet to try to push them up too much. But just a little bit of support, just enough to kind of keep you lifted so that your ankles aren't collapsing in, is going to help. So when we're thinking about plantar fasciitis specifically, that's a problem with the fascia in the bottom of the foot. So fascia is connective tissue, and it goes all the way from our toes, under our feet, wraps up our ankle, and it goes all the way up the backside of our body. So the feet are particularly, I think, prone to getting fascia kind of bound up, knotted up, not moving very well, because we spend so much time on them. They get a lot of impact. And so if we're not making sure we're moving our bodies in a way to kind of help that fascia be able to keep gliding, it just gets stuck, and that's when we end up with pain. So the first thing that really helps just for general foot pain and for plantar fasciitis is to roll out your feet. And there's a few different tools that you can use to do this. This is a foot log, and it has some little nubby things on it. So just kind of rolling your feet just to start breaking up any knots. Any bound up fascia to help get it moving again can be really helpful. Your whole foot will benefit from this, but usually particularly through the arch and in the heel, because oftentimes people feel that plantar fasciitis and the pain because of the tug of the fascia kind of pulling around and up through the ankle. I have a little smaller wooden roller that I actually keep in the bathroom. I would really encourage you to roll out your feet every night before bed, and especially on nights after you work, once we're able to get back to a normal schedule. This is a really great time to work on breaking up that fascia and get our feet feeling better. And then hopefully we can continue with these good habits when we get back to work. So really rolling your feet out at the end of the night is going to be super, super helpful. These feel really nice. When we're dealing with plantar fasciitis, it's even more helpful to get in there with a smaller, harder surface. So this is a little nubby ball, which is nice, but really the best tool that you have for plantar fasciitis, for really breaking up that stuck fascial tissue, is a golf ball. So it doesn't have to be some fancy therapy ball. A golf ball works really well for this. So you just want to find anywhere that's kind of crunchy, anywhere that's kind of painful, anywhere you feel knots, and really try to work through that pretty vigorously. This does not feel good. It shouldn't be excessively painful, but it should be uncomfortable if you're getting in there and breaking up the fascia. Also doing some kind of frictioning back and forth with the ball can also be really helpful in getting that fascia moving again. And make sure you do both sides, even if one is worse than the other, because you want to keep both of them feeling good and happy. So from there, I'm going to show you an exercise that you can try that may help with plantar fasciitis. And the theory behind this is that if we drop our heels down, we're really kind of getting a stretch through the fascia, through the bottom of the foot, and up through this place where it wraps around the heel and comes up the ankle. So these are just calf raises, but with a focus on the lowering stretching portion. So you want to put the balls of your feet on a step. It doesn't have to be fancy. If you have some stairs, if there's a curb, if you have a big heavy book you can stand on, it doesn't have to be very high. It just needs to be high enough that your heels can ideally relax down to the max flexibility point that you have available to you. Be careful that you don't hyperextend your knees. You want them straight but not hyperextended. You want to think about having good posture for this. So lifting your low belly a little bit, thinking long, reaching long through the crown of your head. And then you're just going to press up into the balls of your feet and then let your heels drop and really get into that stretch at the bottom. Press up, drop. Press up, drop. So we're really, this has the nice bonus of being a nice strengthening exercise for the calves, which are always good to have stronger if we're going to be spending a lot of time on our feet. But the more important part is really getting that big stretch through that fascial line on the back side of the body. All right, and then additionally, I'm going to show you a nice fascial stretch specifically for the bottom of the feet. And if your fascia is tight, this is probably going to be fairly uncomfortable, but the more that you do it, the better it will feel. So you're going to come down into a kneeling position and then just take one foot and tuck the toes under, as far under as you can. Try to get the foot as vertical as you can. And then you're just going to sit back down on it, and feel feel that stretch from your toes all the way up through the ankle and the heel. And hold for, up to 60 seconds, or as long as you're able to. That might only be 5 seconds, 10 seconds when you start. And then you're gonna switch sides. Put toes under on the other side, and then sit back onto the foot so that you get a nice stretch. If this doesn't feel like a big, painful stretch, excellent, that's great. Then your fascia probably isn't excessively tight on the bottom of your foot, and that's wonderful. All right, so now, actually I should have stayed down. So now we're gonna go through just a little exercise routine of putting all of the pieces together. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of core, because I think it's good to get the core muscles turned on and working before we go on to other stuff. We don't want to overly fatigue them, but we want them to be ready to support us. So we're going to start on our back. Hopefully you can see me okay. With your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. So we're going to start just by taking a few breaths, because how we breathe and where the breath goes is going to directly impact how our core muscles are able to fire, as well as a lot of the other pieces of our bodies. They're very affected by the way we breathe. So a good breathing pattern is really important. So we're gonna start hands on the ribs. Take an inhale in, and I want you to think about the inhale going down. And also out into the ribs. So when we inhale in, we want the ribs to expand out to the side and to the back. It should expand into our low belly and our low back and all the way down into the pelvic floor. And then we exhale, we want that to reverse. So pelvic floor should lift a little bit. Low abdominal muscles should engage and scoop in. And then our ribs come together at the end. Inhale, all the way down to the pelvic floor. Exhale, lift. And the more we can get into this regular breathing pattern, the more our pelvic floor and core, deep core stabilizer muscles will just turn on when we need them to stabilize our bodies for everything else that we're doing, all the bending and moving and lifting. We wanted those muscles to know how to turn on and be active without us having to think about it. So that's really a big part of what we're trying to train here. So do 2 more. Inhale into the ribs, all the way down to the pelvic floor. Exhale, think about lifting up through the center. And then the ribs come down at the end, without the low belly pooching back out. We really want those low abdominal muscles to stay engaged and not get overpowered by our rectus, our six-pack muscles. So we're not trying to over-clench to bring the ribs down. We're just trying to hold this low engagement here and bring them down gently. 1 more breath. All the way down into the inhale, and then think about it emptying from the bottom up. Right. So now we're going to do a little core exercise called Dead Bug, which we did last week, I believe. So we're going to take another nice inhale in, another nice exhale out, so that we get those low core muscles engaged. And then I'm just going to lift 1 foot just a little bit off the floor without letting my low belly pooch out and without pushing into my opposite foot to lift it off the floor. Engage, lift. If you feel comfortable with these and with the breath, you can keep these muscles braced while you breathe into your ribs, or you can take a breath in between each one to re-brace. But you can go back and look at previous videos for a little more in-depth instruction on this. Make sure that you're Nothing is shifting side to side. Your hips shouldn't need to move. Your pelvis should not move. Should not be pushing into your opposite foot. It's just a really controlled, small movement, and it should primarily be coming from those low core stabilizer muscles. 2 more. Great. So now that our core muscles are nice and turned on and ready to work, we are going to do some deadlifts. So again, you can go back to the previous videos and get more specific form. These can be done with dumbbells or resistance bands or without. I'm going to pretend that, say I'm at home and I have nothing but, say, some cans of food. So I'm just going to grab those. So I want to take an inhale in, exhale out, get those core muscles nice and engaged, and then I'm going to hinge back. Squeeze my glutes at the top. Trying to keep my back really long and straight. And I'm pushing my hips back behind me as far as I can until I feel a stretch in my hamstrings. And we're going to do 12 of these. Really want my core to stay engaged the whole time. And I want to relax my glutes as they go back. I should feel a stretch through my glutes and my hamstrings, and then I'm going to contract them and squeeze on the way up. The more relaxation I can get through those muscles, the more contraction I can get out of them. The more contraction we can get, the more functional and strong they're going to be. I've lost count, so let's say this is 12. So now we're going to do a little upper body, so I'm going to start with some single arm overhead presses. Again, we're going to do 12. I'm really thinking about, as I exhale, pressing up, I'm trying to keep my ribs down, and you can even put your hand on your ribs to make sure that they're not trying to do this. You really want the spine to stay really long and straight. And your neck should be a nice long extension of your spine, but it should also be fairly relaxed. This shouldn't make your neck feel tighter. So if it is feeling tight, you might be trying to use these muscles up here for your press instead of these muscles. So really think about pressing up through these muscles that come underneath your arm. And switch sides. Press, and then try to lower slowly. You might find your range of motion in your shoulder is different from side to side. So keeping that rib down on the side while you press up might be harder on one side than the other. Just a good reason to maybe do a few more on that side that's more difficult to really get that range of motion improved. Because the more that you can move the part of your body that you want to move, say to lift something without everything else going along for the ride, the less strain and the less pain issues you will have, and the more functional and strong your body will be. Great. Now we're going to get into those rear delts, which if you watched the first video, those are some of the really important lifting muscles. So you're just going to kind of hinge forward, and I really want my core engaged, my back really flat. And I'm going to have just a really slight bend in my elbows, and I'm going to keep that shape through my elbows the whole way up and the whole way down. I'm thinking about squeezing the muscles in the back of my shoulder and bringing my shoulder blades together. I do have some little dumbbells or resistance bands, make sure you keep it pretty light because these are small muscles. And it's more important to be able to do the move really well with really good form without having to kind of throw it. Really want to be able to contract and engage those muscles really well in order to get the most benefit out of it. And you want to keep your chin a little bit tucked. Neck, nice long extension of the spine. And again, your neck should be fairly relaxed here. So be careful that you're not shrugging your shoulders up towards your ears. Good. We're gonna do our calf raises. Press up, drop. And really try to think about keeping your ankles really straight, so try not to let them collapse out to the side as you press up or collapse in. Really trying to keep that ankle really stable and straight, knees pointing straight forward. And again, make sure your legs are straight, but that your knees are not hyperextended. You don't want to be hanging on your bones and ligaments. You want to be using your muscles to hold you up. Remember, we're really trying to get into that long stretch at the bottom. You might even think about really kind of dropping your weight into it in a controlled fashion. Do all of those one more time. So 12 deadlifts, nice long spine, really pushing the hips back, letting those glutes and hamstrings relax and stretch, and then contract and squeeze at the top. And whatever your weighted object is or resistance band, you're trying to keep it pretty close to your legs in the front. Exhale as you press up. Make sure those ribs are staying down, your chest isn't following the motion. It's staying down and not moving. On your posture, make sure you're really long, reaching the crown of your head toward the ceiling, neck relaxed, knees straight but not locked. And switch sides. Breathe in. You never need to hold your breath through any of these exercises. Always make sure you're continuing to breathe. Last one. We're going to do our rear delt raises. So slight bend, back nice and straight, hips pushed back a little bit behind you, slight bend in the elbows, and then Squeeze those shoulder blades together in the back. Thinking about contracting those muscles on the back side of your shoulder as you come up to the top. Make sure you're staying really long through your upper body. You're not kind of scrunching down and collapsing, but you're continuing to reach long through your spine. It's going to help make everything feel better. Last counts, and we'll do one more. And one final set of calf raises. And our core should be engaged for this too, so that we can support a nice, good, straight up and down posture. And if you're using something for a little balance, just make sure you're not leaning into it and putting your weight into it, but it's just there to keep you from falling over. Try to make sure the whole ball of your foot stays on the step, so you really get a good stretch at the bottom. Two more. All right, great work. You could even go through that circuit one more time. That would be a great idea. For the sake of time, I won't go through that today, but I hope you'll join us next week. My plan going forward, now that we've kind of worked our way through the body and hit the biggest points where people commonly have pain and discomfort, we'll just be putting together little exercise routines that will incorporate a variety of these things. We'll add in some additional things that will also help target those things that we need to get stronger and be more stable in order to decrease pain and improve function at work. If you have any particular pain issue or question, please do feel free to comment. Anything that I haven't touched on yet, or if you just have more questions about what we have talked about, I'm happy to address that too.